Hey everybody, this is Carissa Keister from Stillwater Area Public Schools, home of the ponies, and you are listening to Pony Voices. On this show, we celebrate the amazing people of Stillwater schools and give you an insider's view of what is happening across our district. Not only is our mascot unique, so are our stories. So grab a cup of coffee, get comfy, and settle in for our latest episode. S-T-I-L-H-2-O! Have you ever tried to wake a teenager up for school in the morning?
Come on, we gotta get going here. You're gonna miss the bus. Aiden, wake up.
Or watched a teenager fight to keep their eyes open during their first hour of class? For many families in the Stillwater Area Public School District, the battle to get their kids up and out of bed on time for school is real.
It takes me a while to get going and feel awake, so.
I personally never get 8 hours of sleep. I'm usually staying up till at least 11, maybe midnight, and wake up at 6. So getting up is not a fun process.
I was late a lot because I don't wake up well in the morning.
Maybe take a snooze in first hour, second hour. It's pretty hard to stay awake.
So why are our teenagers so tired, and how does it impact them at school and in life? Is there anything we can do as a school system to help? For those answers, I'm going to the experts. Today I'm joined by Superintendent Mike Funk and Dr. Therese Amble, a pediatric psychologist with a specialty in behavioral sleep medicine at Children's Minnesota. Thank you both for joining us.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
All right, Dr. Funk, let's start with you. I know the school board has been talking about flipping start times for our secondary and elementary schools. What's prompting this idea, and why do you think it will help our kids?
One of the things that I do every day as a superintendent is try to make decisions and recommendations on what's best for our students. And in this situation, the research is abundantly clear that later start times, past 8:30 in the morning for adolescents, is beneficial to the students. They're more awake, they're more alert, their drive to school is safer, they are more prepared to learn, and it addresses a number of issues with our students. And I've only been here a year and a half, and I've been a superintendent since 2005, and 7:40 start time for our high school students is far and away the earliest I've ever seen in a system that I've been a part of. So I think that this is something we need to take a look at and see if we can work together as a community to try and best meet the needs of our students.
So, Dr. Amble, what's your take on start times? Why do they matter as a person who actually works with families and deals with sleep issues, as well as a mom? Why are start times important to you?
So start times are important because teenagers in our district and across the United States are getting chronically insufficient sleep. So the recommendations for teenager sleep is somewhere between 8 and 10 hours, with those being really broad ranges, and 8 hours really representing the bare minimum that teenagers need to get by. And what we know from CDC recent surveys and other surveys is that about 75% of high schoolers and about 60% of middle schoolers are getting less than that bare minimum 8 hours of recommended sleep. So not even getting at the very bottom of the barrel of what they need to function well during the day.
So what's the impact of that? You say to function well. What does that mean? What does it look like if they don't get that sleep?
Yeah. So then what we see when kids are chronically sleep deprived at the level that teenagers in America are, is that we see that they are, of course, really sleepy and fatigued. We have teenagers who are falling asleep in school, on the bus rides to school. So they're not even awake to learn. They're tardy more often. They're not attending school more often. They're dropping out of school at higher rates. Of course, we see increased physical health implications like increased obesity and decreased physical activity. We see increasing mental health concerns, anxiety, depression, suicidality, worse academic outcomes, grades, and performance. So we really see across the board both kind of things that directly impact them at school, but also just broadly things that impact their physical and mental health, just suffering as a result of them just getting such insufficient sleep.
Are we seeing this in our schools? Talk about this as national research. We're seeing this across the board. But Dr. Funk, what does it look like in our schools when you're out visiting?
Well, I think we are. I think, we were just at one of the schools, at the high school last week, and, we were in a class where they were having a discussion on sleep times. And we were having a fun conversation with the kids, and we were joking with them. But we were asking them, how many of you are still half asleep first hour? And there was considerable, yeah, or I fall asleep, or so how are we setting our kids up for success by doing this? So I just think that, and part of this discussion, interestingly enough, with the students is, well, we can do it. We figured it out. And so, we are asking our 16-year-olds or 15-year-olds to 17-year-olds to adapt to, yep, well, we can do anything you throw at us. We'll slug through it and we'll make it happen. But are we really setting them up for success? And, I think that's one of our roles as a school system is how do we posture our system for success for our students. But I also think it's very important to state that it's a community piece as well, because this is impactful on a large number of people in our community. So how do we balance that as we move forward to do what's best for our students?
I think that's interesting. I was talking with some of the kids too, and that's what they say is, well, we've adjusted, we make it work. Meanwhile, you see them chugging caffeine and staying up late to do homework and dragging themselves to school the next morning. So yes, they're making it work, but is it healthy for them? What are you seeing in your practice when you have families coming in to see you, Dr. Amble? What sorts of things are you seeing that are creating maybe challenges for kids because of that lack of sleep?
Yeah, factors that are contributing to them getting the lack of sleep. I think that for teenagers, I think it's an important point that you made. I think one thing we're up against is that in general, when we look at kind of polling parents again nationwide, is that most parents and teens also don't know the sleep needs of teenagers. So when we ask teenagers, how much sleep do you think you need? On average, they say that they need about 8 hours of sleep. So kind of a adult mindset of how much sleep that they need. And similarly, most parents don't know how much sleep their kids need, so then they don't know when they're getting insufficient sleep. So, looking at those polls again, of those kids who are getting less than 8 hours of sleep, 60% of those parents kind of mark the box that, yep, my kids are getting enough sleep on a nightly basis. So I think that, too, as a culture, we also just don't know the differences, and that teenagers aren't small adults and that they don't have the sleep needs as an adult, that they have more. And so I think that gets in the way too, in addition to numerous other factors that are impacting teens getting enough sleep, for enough time being scheduled for teens to sleep.
We'll talk about teens for a little longer and focus on our elementary school kids too. But one other question I have, I'm hearing from a lot of teenagers and parents about the impact a later dismissal time would have on after-school activities and jobs and all of those things that happen beyond the school day. What do we see in the research or from other districts that have made this change? Is it harder for kids to take advantage of those after-school type activities?
I think there's an adjustment, but I wouldn't say it's harder. I was a superintendent somewhere else previously for 13 years, and I would say 3 years ago maybe, the district I was superintendent of moved our start times to 8:30, and there was some adjustment with students as far as the getting jobs and working. But what I found is, well, it's an adjustment for our whole community. This is just this is what we have to do. This is when our students are going to be available. So I think, again, that's why I keep on reverting back to this community discussion. It's important that we work together to try and meet the needs of our kids while supporting the businesses and other organizations in our community. The other thing that's often out there is, okay, what about sports? And the interesting situation here in the Stillwater area public schools is most of the schools in our conference for athletics are already shifted their start times to a later time. So we would be really becoming more similar to the rest of our conference regarding sports. Now, that's not to say that there's going to be some, maybe JV or sub-varsity level sports that may have to get out of school a little bit early to travel because the day is going to shift, to later in the afternoon. But again, if it's what's best for kids overall, we could make those adjustments.
All right, well, let's talk about elementary. So if we switch start times, our elementary schools then naturally just start earlier. And I have heard from parents that there's a concern, if we're worried about sleep, then why are we asking our elementary school kids to wake up so early and be at school at 7:45? What's your experience, Dr. Amble, with elementary school kids and their sleep needs?
Yeah, so I think a lot of parents can relate to the fact that for most kids when they're young, toddler, preschool, school age, that we have kids who are waking up earlier than their parents. I think everybody's had the experience of like, oh, who's going to be in charge of hanging out with, the kids on Saturday morning so that we can get a little bit of extra sleep. So young kids are naturally waking up earlier and going to bed earlier, and their body allows them to do that. So in a different way than teenagers' bodies allow them to do it. So for teenagers, when they reach about puberty, they start to have what we'd call a 1 to 2 hour physiologic phase delay in their circadian rhythm, which is their sleep clock, and that's both due that to our body slowly starting to release melatonin later in the evening, which is the hormone that helps prime or promote sleep for our body, and that we have teenagers start to have a slowed accumulation of sleep pressure throughout the day. So they need longer until they feel sleepy. Melatonin's being released later, so their clocks are set for them to get sleepy 2 hours later. So your elementary school fifth graders who could fall asleep at 8:30, 9 o'clock, now these teens, their bodies aren't wired to fall asleep until 11 o'clock. So it'd be comparable to putting an adult in bed at 7:30 and telling them to fall asleep. You just can't do it. So with teenagers, they're not able to fall asleep till 11. We're asking them to be up at 6 o'clock to get to school. So they're just not able to get the sleep they need. With elementary school students, they have not yet gone through that shift. Their circadian rhythm for most is much earlier, and we can move their bedtimes earlier for them to get most sleep. So most research would show that when we move elementary school times earlier, that kids might get a small drop in sleep, but likely they're primed to move their bedtimes earlier and get the same amount of sleep.
Okay. So you see this from both a perspective as a physician or an expert in the medical side of things. What about a parent? So you're a mom of some elementary school kids, is that right?
Yeah. So I have a fourth grader, a first grader, and a preschooler.
So imagine the earlier start times on your family. What would it mean for your family to adjust to an earlier elementary start time?
Yeah, that's a great question. So my first grader pops up at 6 a.m. No big deal. We'll happily send her on the bus early. For my fourth grader, she would fall in the camp for maybe some of parents who might be concerned because we are waking her up right now at 7 a.m. To get ready for school. And so for her, it will take more work and effort for us to shift her earlier to get the sleep she needs. I know that we can do that and we can help her. But I also know that when I think about her and having a little bit of a later kind of delay in her schedule than other fourth graders right now, I know that she's going to disproportionately benefit from this later as well. So, right. So for elementary school students who right now, parents are like, I already have to wake them up. I would say, this, like, hold on, because this is going to benefit your kid more in middle school and high school than other students. Because if they're already a little bit delayed, wait till that phase delay kind of kicks in, and they're going to really struggle to fall asleep earlier.
So if you think it's hard to wake up your child now, just wait until they get to middle school or high school. Yeah. Okay. There's a lot of questions in our community about how this is going to impact families. So this is a big change. We've touched on that a little bit, but some of the concern I'm hearing are things like childcare. Now, all of a sudden, I maybe don't need that long block of childcare in the afternoon, but if we change the elementary start times, I'm going to need that care. What are we doing as a district and a community to try to address some of those concerns?
So first thing we have to do is identify the situation. So currently we have a waiting list of approximately 325 students for childcare in the community. So if we are going to be successful with this as a school district, we have to devise strategies that are going to allow us to really, A, reduce that list, and B, prepare for more students as we shift to a later model. So as the high school students will be in school later, we will have less siblings able to help provide daycare. So that's something we're going to have to take a look at. And we're looking at staffing models and how we can shift people to more full-time to accommodate some of the increased need. The other thing that we have at Stillwater Area High School is something called a Pathways program, where we've got career exploration for students. And we could create opportunities as part of that program for students of ours to come and work in the daycare. And so we would increase our workforce that way as well. The other thing we're looking at is after-school programs, chess clubs, Lego clubs, targeted services. We really have not had targeted services, which is additional supports for students after school at the elementary level. We haven't had that, I think, probably since pre-COVID here. So that's another thing that we can take a look at to put some of those programs in place. So the clubs and targeted services might not be an everyday program. They may be 2 or 3 days a week, but that would still be impactful, we think, for families within the community. So this is really, I think, the thing our administration is working on most is, okay, how do we shift resources to provide for this potential need?
So we've talked a lot about the science behind this and the reasons why this makes sense for our kids. We've also talked a little bit about the struggles and the challenges. If you were speaking to the community as you are through this, what does it all come down to? Why do you feel like this is really something we need to explore? How do you think it could benefit our community overall?
Well, I think and the doctor here can talk about the research side of it and the practicalities of it, but again, we are trying to put the needs of our students first here. Now we have to balance that with the needs of the families and the rest of our community. But it's the most successful school systems partner with other parts of their community to be successful, and that's what we really have to do. You know, I think we had a presentation a week or so ago at a board meeting on the science of sleep studies. And I'd heard this, and the researcher who spoke at that meeting brought it up as well. The state of California has legislated no high school can begin before 8:30. So that's law in California. They get it. In Minnesota, we're independent school districts. We get to make our own decisions regarding that. But I think if we can come together and problem solve and look for solutions as a community, we can get this right. But it's going to take some time.
And Dr. Amble, just in closing, I know you're fairly new to our community, and as you said, you have young children. What are your feelings about this as you look at the school district having these conversations? What are your thoughts and hopes?
Yeah, I'm really hopeful that we can make this change for our students. I think that, in addition to all the things, the consequences, we talked about with insufficient sleep, what we know is that healthy school start times have been proven to be an effective countermeasure for insufficient sleep, and it has the potential really to have the most broad-reaching positive impact on the most students in the district. So there are lots of important but more smaller scale changes that can be made: a new science lab, better athletic equipment, new music, all these things that are really important, that have more small scale change for a smaller percentage of students. And really, when we look at the research and just how important sufficient sleep is for our teens to function across the board, I just think that this is the biggest difference that we can make for the most, if not all, the students in our district to have a really positive impact in all their areas of functioning.
Wonderful. Well, I thank you both for your time and your expertise on this. Obviously, this is a community conversation that's ongoing, and we're getting a lot of feedback and input. But I think what you've said very clearly today is that we need to look at the needs of all of our students and really weigh that and find ways to work with our community to solve some of these challenges so we can do what's best for our kids. So thank you both for your time. I appreciate it. If you enjoyed this episode of Pony Voices, please share it with your friends and neighbors. And be sure to subscribe to our podcast to make sure you never miss an episode. Until next time, go Ponies!
STIOH2O!